I have
Point of
break
order.
voting
Point of
committee.
order. Point of order.
We have a point of order, Leah. Anna, what's your point of
sure.
order?
I'm really disgusted in this whole day, and I want to apologize to the two witnesses for coming all this distance to help us solve a problem that women in this country are being killed, and the other parties don't care. I'm disgusted. We need to be talking about this issue so that we can stop.
Yeah.
We need to get back to this. We need to get back to this testimony if we're going to help women in this country.
Let's vote. We'll get back to it. Point of order.
Okay, let's go.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Anna, point of order.
I think what we've done today is re-victimize these poor young women that came here to speak not just on their behalf. She named multiple victims in her testimony. Multiple victims.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Welcome to meeting number 118 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to acknowledge and provide this trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to violence against women. I would like now to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, we have Kate Alexander, founder of End Violence Everywhere. We also have Megan Walker in the room, advocate to end male violence against women. From the Peel Regional Police, we have Nick Milinovich, Deputy Chief of Police, joining us by video conference. At this point, I will give the floor to Miss Alexander to start. You have 5 minutes.
Fortunate to be here today. I'm supposed to be dead. On July 31st, 2021, exactly 3 years ago today, I sent the 2-word WhatsApp message, "Please help," to a friend who thankfully believed me. My ex was beating me. All 6'3", approximately 250 pounds of him, because he couldn't find his car keys. For 4 hours, with his fists, his feet, a wooden rolling pin, door wells, he split my head open in 3 places, gouged my eyes out with his thumbs, kicked my ribs, and tortured me in ways I can feel but can't fully describe. I do not know how my body survived it. My ex enjoyed what he did to me. He threatened to kill my family. The police were going to leave me for dead, but my former neighbor intervened. And after all that, guess what your criminal injustice system gave me? A peace bond. All 8 charges, 5 in the provincial and 3 in the federal, were stayed against my ex. And I can't say his name because it will forever be known as alleged abuse. I ask of you exactly what I asked Justice Himmel, who had the tears in her eyes on March 26, 2024, when I received the peace bond. Why does he abuse, and why is he allowed to get away with it? He abuses because he is publicly and personally rewarded for it, and he is allowed to get away with it because you, the government of Canada, lets him. Abuse is a choice, a moral failing, and it is also inexcusable. Even 3 years later, my ex is still abusing me. I am suing him as the only form of legal justice I have left, and he has put in a meritless counterclaim as a continuation of abuse against me. He states I was self-injurious and I stole his Rolex after. He is lying under oath. You will listen to me because I am Caucasian, educated, and a member of an industry which holds space in the public eye. But these issues have been plaguing people everywhere across the nation for so long in the dark corners. But now we are in the light. We will shine until there is retribution. We will break the stigmas down into the nothingness that they are. There are no stereotypical victims. There are only stereotypical abusers. IPV and SA happens in all cultures, all socioeconomic statuses, races, ages, genders, but so predominantly with women and children. Today is not about me. Today is about us and what this means going forward. You have granted me the honor of speaking on behalf of all men, women, non-binary, and children, survivors of violence. And I want to state from a survivor's perspective, Trudeau doesn't care, Ford doesn't care, Arif doesn't care, and the government doesn't care. The government doesn't care about Courtney Goudreau, who faced potential charges and jail time for speaking the name of her convicted abuser when a publication ban was implemented without her consent. The government doesn't care about Brian and Suzanne Sweeney, whose daughter Angie was shot to death along with 3 innocent children. Brett and Jessica Broadfoot, whose daughter was stabbed to death 2 weeks ago at age 17, leaving behind her absolutely incredible 15-year-old brother Lucas. The government doesn't care about Melanie Hatton, who fled BC to Ontario after nearly being murdered by her ex-partner. She suffers long-term traumatic brain injury and still lives in fear daily with her 2 children, and now owes $300,000 to the CRA because her ex bankrupted her. The government doesn't care about Tanya Couch, who was sexually assaulted by her former commanding officer and cadets, but the military police failed to investigate it properly. The case was finally reopened, leading to 3 sexual assault charges, ultimately being stayed after the defense used Section 278 of the Criminal Code to subpoena 7 years of Tanya's personal counseling records. The government doesn't care about Alexa Barkley, who has suffered multiple SA throughout her life, with only one of her abusers receiving a mere 6 months of house arrest for child sexual assault. Or Daniela Halmos, whose ex has been arrested 6 times and faces 27 charges but is still allowed to go free, and despite her children not wanting it, is allowed to be around them. The government doesn't care about Sandy Proudfoot, who is 86 years old and just finally escaped her abuser, who has tried to bankrupt her while the police lost her victim statement and nothing proceeded. Government doesn't care about Cindy, whose infant daughter was so brutally sexually assaulted that she had children's toys put up her private parts. Her abuser is not incarcerated. The government doesn't care about Marley. After 3 years of going through the courts, she felt dehumanized by the process every single step of the way. She ended up fighting for restorative justice because the justice system doesn't provide justice. Or Britt Hess, who suffered from the same perpetrator and has experienced multiple assault, harassment, times of confinement wherein he was charged, but then breaches bail and all charges are stayed under his charter right. Or
Kate,
Julie McFarlane,
Kate,
who has had...
May I just kindly ask you to slow down a wee bit?
Sure.
The interpreters
I'm trying to get in the 5 minutes.
The interpreters have mentioned to me that they are having trouble translating, so we'll just give you a little bit of liberty with some time because of the translation.
Sure. Thank you. Or Julie McFarlane, who has NDAs used against her to sue her after she was harassed. Or Cassandra, who was nearly murdered from non-state torture and absolutely no charges were laid. Or Siren, who faced a menacing abuser who now has 35 charges and keeps breaching his bail order. Siren's life is in danger, but her ex was just granted visiting rights of their child. There's Fatouma Kousseau, whose daughter disappeared after 18 years of abuse and ultimately was murdered by an American who shouldn't have even been allowed to cross the border because of DUIs. Or there Katie Mayers, who suffered 17 counts of physical assault only to have her harrowing experience explained away. Her child will have to testify. There's Sarah Barber, who has worked tirelessly to shield her children from 3.5 years of post-separation legal abuse in the family court system after experiencing terrifying, relentless violence from a well-known serial woman abuser. Or Corey Lynn, who has a lifetime of sexual assaults starting in a childhood and conditioning her to intimate partner violence relationships and lengthy court family battles to protect her children. Or Travis, who faces bias from the system because of his sexual orientation. Or Heather Matriarch, whose name has been changed because she's an Indigenous woman and still lives in fear
Suspend
of her
the meeting.
abuser.
I'd like to resume if everyone could find their seats. Thank you for your patience. At this time, I would like to take the liberty to allow Kate Alexander a minute or less if you could wrap up just with some disruption. Thank you. Go ahead, Kate.
She is okay. Or Monica, whose 16-year-old daughter nearly committed suicide after her sexual assault. Or Lucy, who was publicly shamed with unethical tactics used against her to bully her for years after testifying versus Jian Gomeshi, who sexually assaulted her and choked her. There's Dan Jennings, whose daughter Caitlin was beaten to death with a hammer in London last year. With the permission from each of these survivors, I struggle condensing these stories to fit into this speech. In all of these cases, there has been multiple police interventions, attempts to leave, negotiate, plead, pray, and run, only to be trapped and further abused by the system and in some cases murdered. We as Canadians have the charter rights, which are essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card for criminals. But what about survivors' rights? Why are our charter rights never accounted for? Most survivors try to leave, but that's when it becomes the most dangerous. 75% of murders happen after the victim leaves. And when we're not murdered, we are left in the dark in a life that we no longer understand, with the most debilitating implications: physical, emotional, financial, mental, and spiritual turmoil. These are not insular struggles. They affect every system of government and every nuance of life: economic, healthcare, childcare, education, housing, etc. Canada spends an underrepresented and dated figure of $8 billion annually on the aftermath of IPV alone. This does not account for the violence of human trafficking, sexual assault, and the underreported cases, which are the majority. The science behind the effects of trauma is endless. Trauma changes the chemistry of your brain. You are not the same person. There is no getting over it. Healing only happens in community with proper medical and therapeutic intervention, and we know the state of the country as far as healthcare is concerned right now. Very few have access to these absolutely necessary remedies in a quantifiable way. Sometimes the effects of trauma are permanent. Could you also imagine having this a pre-existing disability? A staggering 40% of disabled people have been abused. If you haven't met a survivor and victim's family, well, now you have. This is my parents back here. This is my passport, and I'm damn embarrassed. I can't live in Canada anymore because it's not safe for me. But yet, still, I have founded an organization here and in the U.S. called End Violence Everywhere, EVE, a now registered nonprofit. We will put survivors first, reform this justice system, and better the community. We need to work together because you cannot leave it up to the abusers. They do not self-rehabilitate, they do not get better, and they do not stop. In fact, they are empowered every time they get away with it, and they increase their violence. We are too late for tens of thousands of people, but we can prevent further atrocities. Canada needs to stop hiding under the guise of the nice country where nothing bad happens. It's bad, and it's happening right now. So here we present some solutions. Declare IPV and SA a national state of emergency.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
If you could perhaps try to incorporate what's remaining in your comments
Sure.
in some members' times, or how you respond to questions.
Certainly.
At this point, thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Alexander. And for those of you online, I would like to acknowledge that there was a small suspension in the meeting due to a medical emergency in the room that has been hence sorted out. I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Walker. You now have 5 minutes, Ms. Walker.
Thank you so much. As you have just heard, the situation for women and girls in Canada is dire. Women and girls have been erased by government policies. Terms like gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and domestic violence fail to differentiate between victim and offender. According to the UN, male violence against women and girls is the most pervasive human rights abuse in the world. Yet the language used by many governments, including Canada, fail to name it as male violence against women and girls. Tiffany Gates was found dead in her boyfriend's apartment on September 7th, 2023. She was a victim of femicide-suicide. The names and nature of their relationship only became public after friends and family posted to social media. Police have not released information, citing privacy rules. Tiffany's mother, Linda Davidson, has continued to tell police that without releasing information, it is unclear to the public who killed who. On July 16th, as you have just heard, 17-year-old Brianna Broadfoot was stabbed multiple times by a man she was trying to end a relationship with. She died 2 days later. The man who killed her had been charged on March 15th, 2024, with offenses consistent with torture, including assault with choking and suffocation or strangulation activity. She was hospitalized after the assault. He was released with an undertaking not to contact her, a promise to appear, and an order to stay at least 50 meters away from her workplace, home, and school. He was prohibited from possession of firearms, crossbow, or any restricted ammunitions, devices, or weapons. He breached his conditions and was due back in court on July 31st. He was killed by police on the 16th. On June 22nd, 24, 62-year-old Cheryl Sheldon was killed by a man she was trying to leave. He has since been charged with second-degree murder. Cheryl reached out for help to at least 3 London agencies. The first 2 referred her on. The third offered her a bed for the night. Cheryl never arrived. She was killed in the hours after she contacted agencies for help. 2019, 136 women killed. 2020, 160 women killed. 2021, 173 women and girls killed. 2022, 184 women and girls killed. 2023, 187 women and girls were victims of femicide. The total number of femicides in Canada between 2019 and 2023 is 840. 840 dead women. The year after year increases significance, yet here we are, and the government hasn't called it a crisis or epidemic. The government, in fact, hasn't addressed it at all. Current government strategies to end femicide, whatever they are not working. If they were, we would see a decrease in femicide rates. I'm hard-pressed to know what those strategies are, or even if there are strategies. Male violence against women and femicide are preventable, and immediate action has to be taken to end this crisis now. I offer the following recommendations. Legislate and define the term femicide in the current criminal code. The term generally refers to the killing of females by males because they are female. Canada signed a global treaty in 2018 committing to investigate and eliminate femicide. Canada has not followed through. Why not? On September 15, 2022, the London Police Service Board, of which I am Vice Chair, invited the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, former Minister of Justice, and Minister of Women and Gender Equality to attend a meeting to discuss the urgent need for a criminal code definition of femicide. It's been 2 years, still no meeting. Humanize the name of women and girls. They are victims of femicide, and acknowledge that every 48 hours a woman or girl is killed. Follow Ontario municipalities, including London, by declaring femicide an epidemic. Name victims and offenders publicly. Femicide is not a private issue. Restraining orders, undertakings, and peace bonds offer women and girls a false sense of security and places them at increased risk of femicide. Per the examples above, they aren't worth the paper they're written on. The judicial system continues to fail women and girls and needs to be updated.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walker. We are going to, at this point, move to rounds of questions from members. I would also like to remind all of those in the room, all of the members posing questions, that we are here about intimate partner violence against women, so let's try and keep our focus there. At this point, I would like to welcome Michelle for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. Extremely powerful testimony. To call this a crisis is an understatement, and the connection between each of your testimonies is profound. Kate, I know you wanted to finish and say a few more things, but what jumped off the page of me, what you said, above all of the horrific things, calling it alleged, and you have all of those photos of your assault, publicly and personally rewarded for it. Those are your words of your attacker. Can you expand on what you mean by that legally in Canada?
Thank you for the question. Abusers don't think in the same way that the average person does, and which is why they are able to commit the offenses that you or I wouldn't commit. Abusers get off on the reward of being allowed to commit these offenses. I have video taken of my ex and his enjoyment of what he did to me, and knowing that the government said, well, this isn't a big deal. And I will quote the Crown Attorney, "We don't have time for this." So he is publicly rewarded because he feels like he is above the law. He is personally rewarded because he is 6'3" and 250 pounds. He can push me around no matter if I had a black belt or otherwise. He has a son who is in his care, and this was overlooked. There is an open case with CPS. Nothing was done. The federal ombudsperson has called on our behalf. Nothing was done. So his rewards are he gets to operate however he chooses to. There are no consequences for his actions, and I guarantee you if he is not stopped, he will be a part of the homicide statistics. He will kill someone. He came damn close to it with me on this day.
The irony of it being on this day and then your testimony today, and I know you flew a long way to testify here today, and I know your parents are also here, and I think one of the things that we don't address is the impact on families and children as well, and I know Deputy Chief talked about this, and I guess what I'm trying to get at the heart of this in this meeting is what changes do we have to do? And you were poignant in saying you have a Canadian passport, but you don't feel safe in this country. And I guess, we have a letter from the premiers, all premiers across this country asking for bail reform. And, you're saying you don't feel safe. It's a publication ban without consent. And to Deputy Chief's point, you have a blatant disregard. So you can see the connection between Kate's testimony and the Deputy Chief's testimony. So if I could go to the Deputy Chief and say, what needs to be done federally? And to Ms. Walker's point, if the money was being spent the way that it's saying it's being spent, we wouldn't see an increase. We would see a decrease. And yet we have the worst numbers we've ever seen. So if I could get the Deputy Chief on record saying what needs to be done, do you agree with this bail reform letter that the premiers have signed? And how much of this can be reversed in policy federally?
Let me first say, really appreciate the question, and I really want to commend everybody that has come here during this meeting, particularly survivors that are sharing their stories. I do agree with the need to create some change, and the question was very direct: what can be done? And the answer is going to be also very direct and very simple. What we need to begin doing is reprioritize the consideration for victims and survivors in a way that allows them to feel safe in their communities. And at its most basic, we've heard testimony today, and I've spoken to survivors myself, had multiple conversations of people who unfortunately have been targeted or who have experienced similar scenarios. And the reality is they don't feel safe and they don't feel supported by our current system. And so, when a person does build up the courage to notify police who's supposed to protect them, we go and we arrest that person and we charge them. And the idea is that results in that person no longer being a threat. The reality is, from the statistics we've seen and currently what we're experiencing, is it's quite probable that person will continue to be a threat to the survivor or the person who's built up the courage in order to engage police. And, at its basic level, that is what needs to change.
Thank you. And I have such limited time, and this is such a big topic, but I think we have to get to the nuts and bolts of it. And I think when we have two bills, C5 and C75, I guess just a yes or no answer from you, Deputy. Are these bills, and Kate said it beautifully, is, nobody seems to care, but these are policies that if were changed tomorrow, would this give you more freedom to be able to keep people who are at risk of public safety, of hurting more people?
Yeah, we will, definitely it is. We will continue to take advantage of every opportunity and every change we made. And I want to be clear, this is not me advocating. Well, of course, I'm here. I'm wearing a police uniform and I'm representing Peel Police. But I am really representing my community who is not feeling as though the current system is supporting them and considering their interests in the way they feel and the victimization. So contemporarily, it's not working for our community, and we need to make change. We need to begin looking at issues such as bail, the prevalence of illegal firearms, prioritization of the issues for our community, like gender-based violence, human trafficking, and those types of things.
So I want to start everything that I say by saying that if anyone tries to say that there's anyone in this room who doesn't care about this issue, I think that they are playing partisan games, because people in this room have spent our lives fighting on this issue, listening to that kind of testimony, and I just want to reassure you of that. This is something we've never done. We do not use victims' and survivors' trauma to try to score political points in this committee. This is cruel. I think it's cruel to have people relive the trauma that they've endured just to be able to have a meeting so that if it's not agreed to, then there's all kinds of social media that, liberals or others don't care about this issue, which, as we all know, we do very deeply. So I know that under the previous chair, this committee worked with great respect for one another. We made sure that the vice chairs weren't even consulted about having this meeting. Yes, it's an emergency. I would have loved to have had an emergency meeting in June so we could have gotten our red dress alert study done before the end of the session. And honestly, we saw yesterday that Karen Vecchio, our former chair, announced she's not running again, which I think is very sad, because I believe that this committee has important work to do. And we have done it with great. I have the floor, to actually say all of the points.
Currently, Anita has the floor.
Madam Chair, I would like to move a motion. And the reason I'm moving a motion is because in this committee we've respected each other. There are very important issues that we have said we've adjourned debate.
Is the most important issue we can address.
Debate, and I'm hoping that the committee could vote quickly on this motion, hopefully unanimously, so that we can quickly go back to the study, the witnesses that we have today. If we vote right away, it'll only take 5 minutes. But I would like to resume debate on the motion that we adjourned debate on May 13th, 2022. And the motion reads that the Standing Committee on the Status of Women report to the House that A, access and availability to reproductive health services, no matter where one lives in Canada, including safe and legal abortion, is a charter right and is ensured under the Canada Health Act. And B, the decision to have an abortion made by women, transgender, and non-binary individuals for any reason is their freedom of choice and theirs alone. So, Madam Chair, we have refrained from putting motions like this because of collegiality, but at this moment, we're not, and I hope we can do a vote immediately on this motion, and therefore we can get back to our witnesses right away, and we'll only lose 5 minutes in this meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so this is a dilatory motion. Hence, we do need to explore and have the vote. So there'll be no debate, but it's a dilatory motion, so we are obliged to.
Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair, I have my hand up.
At this point, we've called the vote.
All right, so we're going to vote on the dilatory motion to resume the debate on the motion that was read by Ms. Vandenbeld. I'm going to call the vote. Ms. Vandenbeld.
Yay.
Ms. Sidhu.
Yes.
Madame la Présidente.
Monsieur.
Madam Chair.
We are in the middle of the vote, Adrienne.
Ça s'est passé très.
It all happened very quickly. Ms. Vandenbelt read the motion very quickly. I'm a little shocked by how this is going. Can we receive a written copy of the motion, please?
It's resuming debate on a motion that we did already.
Oui, mais Madame Vandenbeld, en ce moment, on est au code.
Yes, but we're currently looking at something else.
L'avoir par écrit, c'est mon droit.
Right here.
It's my right to have it in writing.
It's right here.
Okay.
May I give it to?
Par courriel, Madame Vandenbeld.
By email, please. And if it's not possible, perhaps we can come back to this later.
The vote. It's resuming debate on a motion that was already on the floor.
Madame LaRouche, we do need to continue the vote.
Okay, Monsieur Seri,
Oui.
Mr. El Khoury, Mr. El Khoury, okay, Miss Atwin,
In favor. I think you're on mute, Mr. El Khoury.
I said yes, in favor. Sorry, I'm having little problem with the machine over here.
it's okay.
Do you hear?
I got your vote, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Miss Ferreri,
No.
Miss Roberts,
Absolutely not.
Miss Gray,
No.
Madame Larouche,
Contre.
Miss Kazan,
Yes.
six yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, so at this point, we'll resume debate on your motion. Michelle.
Thanks. So,
Sorry. Madam Chair, I'd like to speak on the motion.
Okay, I'll add your name to the speaking list.
thank you, Madam Chair. So what people are watching at home right now is we have a debate on the floor. We've called an emergency meeting because Stats Canada released shocking statistics. We've seen an increase 75% in sexual assault since 2015. Total sexual violations against children up 119%.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Point of order, Madam Chair. Miss Gazan hai.
Hear you, Sonia.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Miss Gazan had her hand up and wanted to speak first. She indicated early that she wanted to speak, and the chance is not given to her. Can she speak first?
I've currently given the chair to MP Ferrari. I've noticed that MP Gazan has her hand up, and I acknowledge that she'll have the floor next.
Point
Thank
of
you.
order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Certainly.
I had my hand up before. In the history of this committee, we have done things in fairness. I am devastated by the way this meeting is being handled today. I would like us to be collegial. I had my hand up. I would like that to be recognized. This is a very, very harmful meeting for everybody. And I would like my hand to be recognized. With all due respect, Chair. Thank you.
In absolute fairness, I did not see your hand. I now have, once it was acknowledged, and I'll have you on the floor as soon as Michelle is finished.
Madam Chair, I had my hand up. It was, with all due fairness, point of order. I had my hand up. I was told that I had to wait till after the vote. It was acknowledged by you. Everybody saw it in the committee. I would like my turn to speak now, Madam Chair, with all due respect. Thank you.
I did acknowledge your hand during the vote. With reference to this debate, I did acknowledge Michelle first, and you will speak second. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chair. We all saw that Miss Gazan has hand up even before vote, after vote, and everyone saw that. And please be fair with her.
Indeed, I am being fair. I saw and acknowledged her hand up during the vote. I needn't explain myself. What will happen is Michelle will speak, and then as soon as she is finished, then Madame Gazan will happily have the floor.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair. As somebody who has spent their life fighting around issues around violence against women, I find this deeply troubling that my hand was up. It is not being acknowledged. We are talking about a committee where we're supposed to behave in a democratic manner. Certainly, the Canadian public expects us to behave in a democratic manner. And I would like my turn to speak with all due respect, Chair, that we follow rules, as has always happened in this committee, certainly under our former chair who has indicated she is not running. I would like my opportunity to speak. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gazan. I own and I acknowledge that I saw your hand during the vote. At that point, once the debate started, I did pass the floor to MP Ferrari. As soon as she is done, the floor will return to you.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
On the same point of order?
Point of order.
Leah?
As the fact that there's not even an Indigenous person on the panel today, when we are experiencing the highest rates of violence, did not get a chance to put in witnesses, when we just convicted a serial killer in my community for killing 4 women, is deeply troubling to me. Now the fact that my voice is being silenced in the committee after not having an opportunity to put in witnesses is deeply offensive, deeply violent, and deeply troubling. I had my hand up. I would like an opportunity to interject, Madam Chair, with all due respect. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just like to say that I'm in the room, and I saw Leah's hand go up before Michelle indicated that she wanted to speak.
With all due respect, had we just continued on, we would have had both of you speak by now with the time we've allowed for this conversation. I do understand completely, Leah, your frustration, and my sense of fairness is not being tested here. I saw your hand, and at this point, Ms. Ferrari has the floor.
Point of order.
Who's doing point?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to challenge your ruling. I see you've made your ruling, but I disagree with it. So I'd like to challenge the ruling of the chair at this time.
So then we go to a vote? Okay, so at this point, if I have a challenge to the chair, then we go to a vote to direct how we would like to proceed.
To sustain the chair's ruling or to oppose?
To sustain the chair's ruling. Thank
so
you.
We know if we don't want to sustain.
Correct. Thank you.
So we are going to vote on the challenge to the chair's decision. The question is, shall the chair's decision be sustained? So if you vote in the affirmative, it means that you are sustaining the chair's decision. Ms. Vandenbeld.
No.
Ms. Sidhu.
No.
Monsieur Seri.
No.
Mr. El Khoury.
No.
Ms. Atwin.
No.
Ms. Ferrari.
Yes.
Ms. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Gray.
Yes.
Madame Larouche.
Tellement déçue de voir comment tout ça se passe que je préfère.
I'm so disappointed that I'd rather abstain.
Ms. Gazan.
No.
Six nays, 3 yeas.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair?
Richard?
Yes, Richard? I have a question. Madam Clerk, I was not asked to vote. Why not?
Oui, pardon, Monsieur Lehoux.
Apologies, Monsieur Lehoux. Miss Gray is replacing Miss Vien, and so she's the one that I have on the list. But if substitution changes, then I will call you during a vote.
So Leah has the floor. Okay, at this point, Leah, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Really sad about a committee that has worked together to put together transformational studies being used politically today. but I'm to speak to the motion, so I'm going to do that. But I have to say, before I do that, to share how devastated I am, because I can tell you as an Indigenous woman in this place that decided to run because of this particular issue, because I live in ground zero for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, because I live and represent a community where we just had to convict a serial killer because Indigenous women are disposable, because of the fact that there was no Indigenous women asked to speak today. There was nobody from the LGBTQ community asked to speak today. There was nobody from the trans community asked to speak today about violence when we are the ones that are on the front lines of going disappeared and murdered. I find really hurtful the fact that
Point of order. Are we talking about the motion? Sorry, are we debating the motion?
Sorry. Okay, all fair. I'll get to the motion then. And I'll tell you why it's really important. Because I have never in my time since being elected seen greater efforts to perpetrate state control on women's bodies. And I'm going to give you a few examples. In terms of abortion specifically, MP Viersen, Wagenthal, Falk, Lewis, Motz, Couric put forward identical petitions that were presented in 2022 by members listed above, called upon members of parliament, in quotes, and this is in quotes, to do everything in their power to
Madame la Présidente, point d'ordre.
Point of order. Apologies, Madam Chair.
La Présidente.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, we have a point of order.
Status of pro-life
Leah, we have a point of order in the room. Point of order, Adrienne.
Le son en ligne.
The sound coming from Zoom is problematic. I'm not hearing it here in the room, but I've heard that there are issues online. So can you please verify this?
Leah, can you... What we're going to do is we're going to suspend just for 20 seconds or so just to ensure that we have good sound being communicated from Zoom into the room.
No problem, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you.
First, I have to resume the meeting. Leah, please feel free to continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm glad just before I start that we were able to resolve this. Because collegiality has been something, as you know, I have
Point of
braved
order.
about in
Point
committee.
point of order.
We have a point of order, Leah. Anna, what's your point of order?
I'm really disgusted in this whole day, and I want to apologize to the two witnesses for coming all this distance to help us solve a problem that women in this country are being killed and the other parties don't care. I'm disgusted. We need to be talking about this issue so that we can stop.
Yeah. This is not a active point of order, so at this point, Leah, if you could continue.
Yeah, so I'm disgusted because I wasn't given a chance to put forward witnesses when I'm representing ground zero of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. I could have called the families of loved ones who just lost their loved ones to serial killers in my riding down the street from where I live. Not one Indigenous woman, not one trans woman was asked. It was not done in a thoughtful way. It's a way of silencing voices. And I do not accept that. Getting back to the motion on abortion. You want to talk about state control of bodies? Indigenous women have had it the worst, including the forced sterilization of our women that continues today. So let me continue about being disgusted when I have been on the forefront since being elected, fighting against violence, getting bills passed. I will not make apologies to conservatives who told me and all my sisters during the national inquiry that murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls were not on their radar. That pushed against affirming that what is happening to Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA+, was an ongoing genocide, minimizing the fact that thousands of Indigenous women, so I don't want to hear about that. I've never gotten upset in this meeting, ever. I've worked with everybody here. So let me go on about why state control of women's bodies, something that has never happened to men. You name me one law where men's votes or bodies are being threatened by state control. Shame, shame, shameful. The fact that we had a backdoor legislation opposed by every single women's organization across the country working to end violence, Bill C-33, in the name of violence, using, once again, another example of using the crisis of violence against women for political points to push forward backdoor legislation threatening abortion. It says Canada is failing its pregnant women and their preborn children, something that's already protected under the criminal code, something that was very aggressively opposed by all women's organizations across the country who are dealing with domestic violence, minus two pro-choice organizations. The fact that in 2020, the current Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, claimed that Conservative MPs under his leadership would be allowed to vote in their conscience on anti-choice legislation. There's no requirement in the Conservative Party to be pro-choice. This is in contrast, certainly, to the NDP. This was reported in the Toronto Star. Yet the entire Conservative Party, including the leader, even though it was supposed by all women's organizations that are dealing with violence, voted in favor of C-311. And this includes MPs who had previously claimed to be pro-choice. And following that voice, the Abortion Rights Coalition Canada now lists all Conservative MPs as anti-choice. So it's not surprising to me that every Conservative member on the committee today voted against the motion. It's not surprising. This is about women's control over decisions. This is about safety of women. This is about protecting women and diverse gendered folks from state control over our bodies. This is about protecting women from violence that is perpetrated by male Conservative members, including MP Jamil Javani, who's best friends with Trump's running mate, JD Vance, from Yale Law School. Javani was previously dismissed by Bell Media for misgendering a public figure. Among other reasons, Javani's best friend, Vance, has been quoted saying that women should stay in abusive marriages, that getting a divorce is
point of order,
easy, and that career-oriented women are more
point of order.
We have a point of order on the table.
Than women need to be.
We have a point of order.
Relevance to the motion.
Relevance to the motion. Absolutely, it is relevant to the motion. It is about a constant attack on women.
All of my years in advocating for women. We are leaving. We will not ever have...
Madam Chair, or sorry, your mic is not on, and no one. And at this point, we don't have space to acknowledge in this space right now.
I want to acknowledge the witnesses, Madam Speaker, because I'm the one.
The witnesses are no longer in the room.
Okay.
Can I adjourn the meeting? Leah, you still have the... Leah?
This is about collegiality. This is about using
Point of order, Madam
for
Chair.
a political agenda.
Collegiality is.
This
Point of order. Leah, we have a point of order. Leah, we have a point of order.
The witnesses have left status of women, and if we are collegial, I just think if we are focusing on women here, to resume here, they've actually turned their back and they've left. They were here to represent all women, which is what this committee is for, and the staggering stats that were recently released, and that is what's happened, and we need to get back to this. We need to get back to this testimony if we're going to help women in this country.
Let's vote. We'll get back to it.
Point of order.
Okay, let's go.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Anna, point of order.
I think what we've done today is re-victimize these poor young women that came here to speak not just on their behalf. She named multiple victims in her testimony. Multiple victims. So it's not about just one victim, it's about multiple victims.
And they were Indigenous.
And Indigenous, well, it should be.
Not a point of order.
It should be.
Who's asking for Ms. Atwin, I believe?
I was just saying it wasn't a point of order, Madam Chair. There's been a lot of point of orders that were not actual point of orders.
Okay. Tracy, is your hand up for a point of order or no? Okay. Leah, the floor is yours. Sorry. Tracy, was your a point of order?
Originally, it was to speak, so if I could still stay on the speaking order for later on your list there. But I will do a point of order because what has just occurred here with the witnesses who came here to testify have been completely shut out, and
Madam Chair, it's
committee
not
members
a point of order.
on this chair. Madam Chair, the committee members here from the opposite parties, the Liberal and the NDP, have completely shut out these witnesses from testifying, and it's absolutely brutal what has happened here. They are being re-victimized.
Point of order.
Leah,
Point of order.
the floor is yours, Leah.
Facts. I'm stating facts here. Like in 2019, Andrew Shearer, in response to murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, said it shouldn't be labeled as a genocide. It's in a CBC article. I have spent my whole life fighting for these issues, and I wasn't even given a chance to put witnesses on. I am being taken out of my community, who's in a constant state of grieving, from door knocking, checking in on my neighbors. And we cannot allow this committee. We cannot allow this committee to be dragged down the conservative hole of taking over. This is the only place where we as women have been able to sit and be collegial and bring forward witnesses. This is the only place in this place. This is the place where we push for red dress alert. This is the place where we put forward a study that gave a clear correlation between violence against women and resource extraction, something that a conservative member, the study called disgusting in the news. So this is why I'm here in this committee. And you know, everybody around the table, outside of members that are not regular committee members, that I have always worked across party lines to make sure that this committee functions. And to use women or victims of violence without proper trauma-informed care, including for me, by the way, as a survivor of violence, is really troubling. I am devastated by what has happened here today. Devastated. I'm so devastated, Chair, that it's hard for me to hold back tears, because this was the one place, in this place, where women could sit in safety, and it's no longer safe. And what does that mean? It means all the work that we are doing to fight for women is now in jeopardy, because we're playing games, And we can't play games on the backs of women and diverse gendered people. Their lives are on the line, and what we do matters. That's why I feel the way I do today.
Thank you, Leah.
Because we could have done this properly, Chair. We could have done this properly because it is an epidemic of violence. Cities across the country have declared this an epidemic. There's no question on that. We need to do better. We need to represent our constituents. We need to fight for people who don't have a voice, including the large number of women in my riding that are suffering violence. I hope that we can do better. Lives are on the line. This isn't a game. We can't play games in this committee. This is a life and death committee. I don't want to play games because I respect our committee too much. And I respect the people that we're fighting for. Because when we don't, lives are on the line.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Chair.
I would just like to acknowledge that this meeting was struck to hear testimony from survivors and law enforcement officials. It was my understanding that it is extremely important that we provide the opportunity and the space for police forces and victims to enlighten and share with the community as its whole with our current mandate, and to try what we can do to stem and stop this epidemic. At this point, Michelle, you have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So what's happened here today is Status of Women reconvened for the summer because Stats Canada released even more shocking statistics. We know this. We sit in Status of Women. The rate of domestic violence is at epic proportions. 95 municipalities in Ontario alone have declared this a crisis. The deputy chief here from Peel today testified saying a woman is strangled every single day just in his community. We had a woman fly here from California to tell us that on the anniversary of her near-death experience from her abuser, that she doesn't feel safe to use her Canadian passport because her attacker is personally rewarded for being an abuser under our Canadian federal laws. Her mom is standing here right now watching this. Her mom is the witnesses have left in tears.
Point of order.
Megan Walker, who has worked with London
Point
Police,
of order,
said,
Michelle.
Go ahead.
Is that one?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Relevance to the motion, please.
Yep, thank you. I'm getting there. And, you know, Kate's mom is standing here, and we talked about this. This is the status of women. The impact. Women are the whole heartbeat of society. And this wasn't a game. And the Liberal MP across the way says that we said nobody cares. That was victim testimony. The victim testimony said Trudeau doesn't care, not us. And the NDP colleague from Winnipeg, who has epic proportions of domestic violence, homicides, murders, there was plenty of reference to Indigenous folks. Kate, who was representing here today, represented voices of dozens of victims. So did Megan Walker, who has dedicated her life to empowering women. And so did the deputy police chief. And so what happened? The Liberal MP put forward a motion on abortion in the middle of testimony, where they were asking for legitimate change. You know what this committee is supposed to do? It's supposed to say, listen, what are we doing differently?
Point of order, relevance.
We're talking about your motion. That's what we're talking about, Liberal MP across the way. And nobody here brought up abortion. You did. We brought these women here today and the police chief because we have bills that are sitting in the House of Commons that are actually making things worse. Right now, please. If you don't know this story, this is happening right now. This woman's body could be found at any time. Hopefully she is found alive. But a man charged with kidnapping, a search for Markham woman continues. Right now this is happening. Right now this is happening. And if there's a member in this committee that doesn't think this is happening, and to my colleague from Winnipeg, 100%. But what is collegiality? What is compassion if you are not using this damn committee to change the legislation to save lives?
Point of order. Point of order,
Leah.
Collegiality is giving people time to put forward witnesses because we all care about the issue. Collegiality is about making sure that we do things properly.
That's perfect.
So that we can deal with things and make change. That's what collegiality is. To my friend across the way, who I've worked very closely with in committee in a collegial way, that we work very respectfully with, as somebody who they know on the committee has been an advocate on the front lines of this issue, I would have expected at least the opportunity to put forward witnesses. I would have respected that, and I would have acted collegially because I care about this committee. That's what collegiality means to me.
Thank you. So
and the fact that, just a clarification,
it's not a point of order.
pointed at me. The other clarification is that Indigenous women have our own voices and we can speak for ourselves.
Thank you.
That's why it's important to have
So
it.
that was your point of order. So Michelle, back to you.
Thank you. And so I think you are 100% right. And I think that is why we need to extend these meetings. And I'm going to put forward a motion. And I just, on behalf of the entire committee, and again, I will reiterate this to Kate's mom, who's standing here, who's had to witness her daughter leave in tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry isn't good enough.
I agree.
We've heard sorry.
I agree.
A lot.
Okay.
Agree. I would like to put forward a motion. This has to go further than status of women, but I'm going to put forward this motion today. Given testimony heard today that the Standing Committee on the Status of Women hold 4 more meetings on the impacts of violent crime against women and reports to the House. And that is what I would suggest. It is merely to hear more from victims, and in the spirit of my colleagues' notes, let's do this. Obviously, this is heated. Obviously, this is a serious issue. But to put forward a motion in the middle of victim testimony about abortion,
Doesn't make sense.
so
Okay, so there currently is a motion on the floor, the original one, so we can't pass a second motion until the original motion is dealt with. So let me just see here. So we then have to we'll have to resume because there currently is still a speaking order on the original motion. We have to speak to that, and then we'll entertain that of your motion, MP Ferrari. Tracy, you're next on the floor. Tracy, you're currently muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. When we look at why we're here today, it was really prompted by new information that came from Stats Canada, which showed the increases in violence and the increases in crime. That's the whole reason for prompting this. And I know that there were some members, in particular the Liberal member, who gave a 5-minute partisan speech on how this wasn't important to be here today. But that's the whole reason why we're here. And sometimes issues emerge that are very important and very time sensitive. And so I appreciate the fact that my colleagues had put this together. So because this issue is not something with violence against women, and the increases in crime and violence against women is not something that can just sit until the House resumed in the fall. And so I appreciate that my colleagues had worked on this. I think based on some of the comments made from Ms. Gazan at this committee, that this is an important topic that needs to be discussed more, and that we need to hear from more witnesses. I do agree with that, and I think my colleagues agree with that. And this is just a starting point for that. And so I think that we do need to really talk about this a lot more. Every day that passes, when I hear the statistics from the deputy chief that he gave of every day the violence that's occurring against women, it was very impactful. And thank you for being here today as well, and to give your experience on this. And so based on that, what I would like to do is to adjourn debate on the current motion that we have right now, so that we can move into the other motion that Ms. Ferrari would like to bring, so that we can continue the discussion that seems to be very important to everyone that's at the committee here today.
Point down, Madame la Présidente.
Point of order.
Motion on the table. I'll entertain your thoughts
Écoutez,
quickly.
tout le monde s'est exprimé jusqu'à...
Everyone was able to speak, so I would like to also be able to speak with my point of order. I am so disappointed by what happened at the status of women today. In a newspaper article, I talked about mud throwing between the party in power and the opposition. I said to journalists that I had seen many committees become political, and they were no longer serving their causes. I recently sat in at the Health Committee, which also became political, as did Public Safety. Same thing at Foreign Affairs. Because of partisanship, things are no longer moving forward. And the same thing is now happening at the Status of Women Committee. You all fell into this trap, and we have made this issue of violence against women political. It is very disappointing.
Il y a des témoins.
Witnesses left the room crying. I've been here since I was elected in 2019, and I have never seen anything like this. The Status of Women Committee was called in 2020 to examine the impact of the pandemic on women. I came to do the work in 2020. I came back in 2022 because there was a meeting on women in sports. We sat in the summer. Those, regardless of the importance of those issues, we were able to move forward. I came here and witnesses left crying, and I've never seen this before. And seeing how this committee is carrying on, I've never seen that either. I am so disheartened to see that the Status of Women Committee, that up until now was very proud of not falling into the trap of partisanship. And I was hoping that my committee would not fall into this trap. Women cannot become tools for political games, and that's what's happening. And so I needed to speak my mind because everyone else has done so. That is my point of order, and I'm so disappointed by what happened today. Nobody wins after a meeting like this one. And unfortunately, the ones who lose are, again, women who are victims of violence. All women who are victims of violence.
Thank you, Adjourned. Indeed, I was gracious with the point of order. We do have a dilatory motion on the table from Madam Gray to adjourn to debate on that motion. So at this point, we need to vote on the dilatory motion.
All right, I'm going to call the vote. Ms. Vandenbeld?
No.
Pouvez-vous rappeler la motion sur laquelle...
Can you remind us which motion we're voting on, please, Ms. Chair?
On est en train de voter sur la motion.
We are voting on the dilatory motion to adjourn debate on the motion moved by Ms. Vandenbelt.
Ms. Sidhu?
No.
Monsieur Serré?
No.
Mr. El Khoury?
No.
Ms. Atwin?
No.
Ms. Ferreri?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Gray?
Yes.
Madame Larouche?
Oui.
Pardon?
Oui.
Ms. Gazan?
No.
Five yeas, 5 nays. Ms. Gazan, could I re-record your vote, please?
No.
Six nays, five, sorry, my gosh. 6 nays, 4 yeas. Apologies.
Okay, so we will continue debate on that motion. Anna?
I would like to get agreement in adjourning this meeting because I don't think we're getting anywhere. Yes.
Is there consensus in the room, or do we need a vote? Consensus? Okay, meeting adjourned.